Then this officer told me, it's okay with me that you're religious, And I felt really, astonished that he is talking this way. And then he told me, but there is one problem. The moment you put this yarmulke on your head, it's like a political manifestation. For you try to influence other people, to behave like you. And it's already a crime. And then he told me there are a list of belongings that a prisoner you are considered to have, and there is nothing like that. So never when being free, never declares that you were punished for being religious. We punish you for violating the regime of the prison. So remove immediately your yarmulke. And when I refused, some soldiers come, and before they throw me on the ground, beat me with their boots.
Wait. They threw you on the ground, and they beat you with the boots, and you said...
For I had, I would keep my yarmulke this way.
And you said that there was no corporal punishment. So there we go.
Okay, no, it's
not exactly.
If you are violating the regime,
so it's normal. It's normal.
Yeah, it's normal.
But it doesn't happen in free countries, in the prisons like American prisons.
I was not there, and I hope never being in prison in America. So I don't know what the rules are.
No, but I'm sure that you knew what a normal.
I couldn't imagine that it is what they are doing. The real violation of human rights is something principle. If I would worship like something strange, they could prohibit it. But who being disturbed that I am having this yarmulke on my head, they were disturbed by it. And certainly also he told never say that it was for religious reason or political. It was definitely for the political reason, not for breaking their regime.
Okay, so you just said again, initially it sounded like GULAG was almost like what they say in Russia, sanatorium. Here, sanatorium is the mental. Speaking of which, by the way, I almost forgot. When you spoke at this Russian community the other day, you brought up the psychiatry is being used in USSR against perfectly normal people. This is another thing that probably many people just don't understand, how psychiatry was misused back in USSR. So can you tell me
But as a matter of fact, people knowledgeable in the issue knows it is an old story, but I personally experienced myself, so I will tell it. After I wouldn't cooperate on the levels I would expect other cooperate from my friends that were arrested there in the airport, they told me, see, you behave strangely, you are not afraid of us. Normal person has to be afraid being in a prison of secret services of KGB. So we move you for expertise to check you whether you have mental problems. And they sent me to a notorious Moscow institute, so-called Psychiatrical Institute named by Professor Serbsky.
Not Kashenko?
No, Professor Serbsky. And there was a special ward for political prisoners.
Special ward, think about it. Special ward for political
prisoners.
Well,
they would say
patients. They would call them patients. I guess not prisoners.
Yeah, they're ill people.
Right.
They would say, see, everybody knows that socialism is paradise.
Yeah.
If you disagree, that means that you have mental problems.
You have to be treated. So what happened? This is.
So the moment I was brought there, I was not their antagonist. I was like a defector, somebody that tried to escape. But I hold necessary information that I wouldn't disclose, different from my friends. So the moment I was brought there, I was visited, or better to say, I was escorted to an office of a doctor. The doctor had...
so-called doctor?
Doctor, obviously, he demonstrated that he is not. He had a uniform of a KGB officer and a white clock and white clock on his shoulders. And he told, see, we know that you are holding information that we need badly. So if you start cooperating, it's okay. If not, we shall treat you with medicines, and you can imagine what will happen with you.
And what can happen? What would have happened?
For the beginning, just to weaken my will and make me more talkative.
I'm sorry?
To make me more talkative. Give me special medicines that will open my mouth. And if I somehow stronger than their medicines, simply make me insane. Teaching with my
Make
medicine.
you insane.
Yeah.
So,
So I met people there on the status of being treated, after being treatment, really crazy people.
So the so-called Soviet psychiatrists, so-called doctors, they would make perfectly normal, sane people insane
Yeah.
by using special medicines to make them insane.
Or maybe different methods to make you crazy.
But
Not necessarily you need medicine. You keep in us condition like being in the world with crazy people. You can get yourself crazy without medicine.
So I mean, I just have no words. I mean, that's the Soviet Union for you.
Yeah.
So
again, I was ready for that when I went to struggle for my human rights free movement. I understood that I'm going to lose my life in my house or whatever, but there was no way out. It was terrible to stay anymore in this suppressive country. That's why I was not afraid. And miracles happens.
So, but what specifically again did they do? I mean, can you be more specific about the usage of psychiatry, so-called psychiatry in the USSR to break perfectly normal?
No, I simply make you injections.
Injection. You don't know what medicines they would use.
And then what was obvious that even in the food, they would add something that would weaken your will, your possibility to be strong and not to cooperate. I felt it on myself.
You felt
and I felt at the time on the verge being, insane. For I start hearing voices. The first symptom that you're hearing voices in your eyes means you have a schizophrenia.
Unbelievable. So did they actually use this?
I never was in the room that they would put in the food all the kind of medicine, but it was obvious to everybody.
So you obviously had the symptoms that they did something to you.
Yeah.
How much time did you spend in this psychiatric?
Only a month.
Only month. I spent at some point 10 days in the hospital, like real hospital. To me, it was like eternity. Now a month in a so-called psychiatry ward, but they didn't break your spirit. They didn't break your will.
No.
But even with the use of all the so-called medicines, how did it fail? I mean, is there something so special about you, or their medicine was not strong enough?
They hesitated. Our case was worldly wide known, and they had to make a decision. For the beginning, they really needed only me to disclose information that I had, and I felt that intimidating me, and maybe it will be enough to break my will. They were not really not out to treat me forcibly.
But you said, saw people in the psychiatric ward who were perfectly normal people?
Used to be. There was like nurses. I believe they themselves were like agents of KGB, old women. And I asked one nurse, say, this man, how it was? And she told, I remember him when he was primarily arrived, was exactly like you, young and talkative and whatever, see what happens after a while.
Oh my God. So this is even worse.
Maybe it was a kind, of mental pressure. She worked for them to intimidate me as well, but I could trust her.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about it, this is even worse than gulags. I mean, we think, or in America, they think that gulag is one of the worst thing that can happen.
Again, it used to be during Stalin time that you arriving in a prison could be killed by the criminals the very day, the very moment, and there is nobody could protest. Maybe they would admit during Stalin time you had a quarrel with somebody, and this somebody had a knife and he killed you. A lot of people had and still have knives and weapons inside the prison. And for example, when I was in this notorious Vladimir prison, for the reason that I was put there for keeping Sabbath, according to Jewish tradition, you are not supposed to work on Shabbos, and I refused to work on Shabbos, Shabbat. So they moved me, they sentenced me to 3 years of imprisonment for violating against their rules. And each day we could listen on their radio There was in inner radio in the Vladimir prison announcement. This day, this one killed another one, and the knives were found. So we like tell everybody of prisoners, give away your weapon. If we found, you will be punished. But it was an everyday procedure that somebody is killing somebody else, and nobody knows.
For everybody to hear.
For there were thousands of prisoners.
Now, when you say that you refused to work on Shabbat, how many days a week were you supposed to work?
As a matter of fact, we were permitted. It was a free day on Sunday.
Sunday, 1 day free.
Yeah. So I told I am ready to work on Sunday. For it is not sacred for me, but permit me to work on Saturday.
How many hours a day did you have to work? And again, it's slave labor. You had to work.
Not much. 9 hours.
9 hours. And what kind of work was that?
It was a simple work, like assembling small parts, but like the rate was very high. You can't hardly. You have to sit all the time and work.
You mean
the moment? Yeah, production. The moment you stop and you can't accomplish the rate of production 100%.
The quota.
The quota. You'll be punished for that.
And what sort of punishment?
Punishment: cut your food twice, or put in punishment room if you continue.
Food by half. So, speaking of food, by the way, and so when it comes to production, what specifically were you making there?
They would assemble parts of electric iron.
Electric irons, like the ones that would sell
small
to the consumers in USSR. So
small
labor,
parts. The difficulty is that there are a lot of smaller parts, and you have to put it very, very quick, very fast. Otherwise, you can't produce whatever is needed, the quota. So I was young and energetic. I could do it, but older people failed to do it. They were always, in tension that they every moment can be punished.
So the few consumer goods that you could buy on the shelves of the stores in USSR, even those consumer goods, as you're saying, were produced by slave labor. I mean, this is slave labor, plain and simple.
Sure.
When you say that they would cut your rations by half if you don't meet your quota, what was the rations in the first place? What did they feed you?
We would get some, I believe, like that 6 pieces of bread.
You mean six slices of bread?
Yeah, 6 slices. And some soup, and maybe porridge. That's all.
And that was it?
That's all.
Meat or something like that? Hardly ever?
No meat.
No meat, ever? In 11 years?
I as a religious Jew, I wouldn't eat the meat, but I noticed that other people would get, in soup, something looking like meat. Fish, yes. Fishes, yes. Like salted fish. 2 times during a week. The pieces of.
How many times?
Was selotki.
The detail, okay. Fishtail. How many times a day would they feed you?
3 times.
3 times a day.
Yeah. Breakfast. Then mostly bread and tea, and
bread and tea. Sweet tea.
Some sweet, I like a small spoonful of sugar, and then you had during the supper time, like in the middle of the day, and then something like that as well, some porridge. If you product more, you can get another dish of porridge.
I see.
That's not porridge, I say that's kasha. Kasha. Perlova kasha. Not something good, The bad way of...
Diluted.
Yeah.
So was it enough, were you getting enough calories to sustain you, or everybody was losing weight over there? How did prisoners do?
Certainly they lose weight. But, nowadays doctor says that it's healthy to eat less.
Right. It's not healthy when you look like a skeleton, but people were not looking like skeletons, were they?
Not too much, but they were thin, and if you stay for a longer time, say if you stay 3, 4, 5 years, you can endure it. But then later, after 10 years, you got all kind of stomach complications. And if you arrive to prison having this kind of complication, you certainly will die. There is no medical treatment.
Speaking
There are
of-
hospitals, but you know what kind of treatment they have in normal hospitals,
Yeah.
and specifically that for the prisons.
I know people don't
People
understand.
died in
They think that there's like free medicine over there, like free medical care over there.
Yeah,
You had access to the care, which is true.
no,
You had access, but you had no care.
no.
And the care that you would get, I mean, think about this way: if you go to a dentist and you want to have a feeling, there was no Novocaine, there was no anesthesia,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, some people it's hard to believe, but as a kid, I remember that the worst thing would be is to go to say dentist when they'll drill your tooth
Yeah.
with no anesthesia, nothing.
As a matter of fact, when I was out from the prison, coming to Israel, I lost all my teeth.
You lost all your teeth.
All this is like a prosthesis.
That's you mean when you were young,
Yeah, yeah.
and you lost all your teeth because malnutrition, I guess.
Malnutrition.
Now, speaking of medical care over there, since you brought it up, I mean, if you're young, maybe your body is still strong enough to resist the elements. But
You know what I will mention? Sorry to disturb you.
Uh-huh.
Things happened. There were people that spent more than 10 years in the prison. They couldn't eat bread. They had stomach problems, and the bread was very sour, uneatable. So young people would eat the bread of the old people.
And old people would do what? Die?
Like going to die. But they couldn't eat them. It's burning in your stomach. You can't eat it. Young people without this kind of problems, they stayed for a shorter time, could eat it. So we had additional food this way, and then we had the herbs in the yard. Our labor camp was in a forest, on the bog. We couldn't dig tunnels to run away, so it was a lot of water. And a lot of grass would grow there. Some of them are eatable, so we would collect and eat it.
Eat grass.
Grass.
Eat grass.
Herbs. Vitamins.
Right. But if you do have, even as a young person, we all have health issues, young or old, what kind of treatment would you get over there?
They
really serious issues.
Yeah. I believe, to begin with, in our specific compulsory labor camps, there was no doctor at all.
No doctor. You said there were thousands of people, not a single doctor.
No, not thousands. Half of 500.
500 people, not a single doctor.
No single doctor, but there was somebody got kind of medical education who never know what kind of.
Like half nurse.
Yeah. So, and for every illness, he had the same pill.
Yeah, but there's a joke, when they go to the doctor, he breaks a pill in half. This is one half for your head, and the other one is, let's say, for your stomach.
Yeah.
So, but seriously, when people are sick, when you're just incapacitated, you just can't go to work. You cannot. You're sick. What happens?
It was good. If you were really ill,
really
have a fever or whatever, you can stay in the barrack.
But still, you stay in the barrack, but you don't get medical help, medical treatment.
But by the way, the human body is that strong that heals itself.
Really?
Really, you don't need medicines.
Really?
Sometimes the medicines are even,
that's
dangerous.
News to me.
So people enjoy it, not to go to work, to stay for a while in the barrack. It was like vacations.
But the bottom line again.
My advice: if you are going to sit in a Soviet prison, never be ill. If you are ill, better not to go there. There's no, There was a famous man, Golanskov, that died on my eyes there.
Really?
He had only ulcer, and they can't do anything about him.
So because of
he was a young man before his 40s.
And he died for, not really that complicated of medical issues.
But if you are not treated, finally it became dangerous.
That's my point. So in other words, the lack of medical treatment essentially will lead to death.
Sure.
So it's like a death sentence if you're not
Notice nobody sentenced you. You try to keep your house good, and they will be okay.
Well, yeah, but if you have chronic diseases, like I had one, for instance,
Right.
I guess if not for medical health, I would have been, close to death.
Yeah, yes, sure. It's a problem.
Another important issue, by the way, you are a hero, not only because, I know you don't like the word hero, but yes, you are a hero.
Okay, nobody made this
You
definition. What does it mean a hero, right? There is no definition.
There's
No definition.
but based on your life, what you have done, you are a hero, whether you like it or not. Anyway,
I don't need pay you for the compliment. That's okay.
now I have to pay my gratitude to what you have done, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because initially when I asked you about your plot to hijack the plane and leave USSR, your idea was not just essentially to improve your life, but improve
Mostly
the lives,
bring freedom to Soviet
freedom for the Soviet Jewry
and the
country
general for
in
the
general.
Yeah. And then just to mention, hijackers normally try to harm the pilots or whatever. In our case, we had our own pilot. So
Right.
we had no need, to use force or to
Overpower
compel.
them.
Yeah.
Fascinating book. Strongly recommend. You learn all the details about this operation, wedding operation. So, but what I realized is that we sort of take for granted now, sort of a little bit younger generation than you, that there was always sort of protest against the Soviet Union, that there was this movement against the Soviet brutality. I just realized that it only started basically since your case, brought in the focus the issues that we experienced behind the Iron Curtain. There is the lack of freedoms, the Soviet brutality, the lack of possibility to emigrate, practice your religion.
Right.
So is it true that you were essentially the ones, the catalyst that sprung this anti-Soviet movement, or rather awareness, at least awareness of the Soviet brutality?
As to deal with the Jewish issue, it may happen. Again, it is not me specifically. I mean, me and my friends.
Right, your group of
And
people.
then, but generally, the prisoners of conscience, existed since the revolution of 1917. People always were in prison, millions of them.
But you know what shocked me? Even back in the USSR, I remember my English was obviously very, very rusty back then, but I came across a book, written by, and I think even borrowed in the library, if not mistaken, by the former ambassador to USSR, to the USSR.
Right.
And he was sort of giving his story about his understanding of the politics of USSR, and he was ambassador there. Davis, I think, was his last name.
Sure.
In the late 30s during the purges. And what shocked me was that he was only beginning to realize 20 years of the Soviet brutality starting from 1917, what was actually going on behind the Iron Curtain. It seems like the Iron Curtain was really the Iron Curtain. And not only...
what else? You simply cannot believe that it happens. You don't start thinking that it happens.
Because
if somebody is telling you, you say it's simple line.
impossible.
That is impossible. The moment you can understand that it is possible, then you understand that everything is true, and it's much more, on bigger expanse that you can imagine.
That's right. And again, like I said, what really shocked me was that the Western world really believed the Soviet propaganda.
Yeah.
That everything was so cool and dandy.
But you couldn't imagine that it can be that human beings, like in Holocaust, until these people come to their death camps, they couldn't imagine a human being can conduct this brutal way.
That's true. But it's just amazing that propaganda does work. And speaking of which, that brings us to the current situation in this country, in the United States of America.
I'm not keen on it.
Well, but what you are keen on, let me finish my thought,
I'm sorry.
is the fact that when we had the election, I mean, you're in Israel, obviously, follow Israeli politics, but here in the country we had an election of
Sure,
last
we
year.
followed.
Good. So one of the
Bernie
candidates,
Sanders.
exactly, Bernie Sanders. And when young people, so-called democratic socialists,
Yeah.
there can be democratic socialism. It's either democracy,
It's a
socialism,
contradiction,
it's a
you know.
contradiction. A lot of people don't understand that. They think that
Uh-huh.
if they add democratic before socialism, it's called identity. It's an oxymoron. There's an English word, oxymoron. The two words they cannot put together, even though they're totally contradictory.
Contradiction.
So my point is that when they conducted a survey of young people ages, I believe, 18 through 35, some 60%, to me, to you as well, I'm sure, it's a shocking number of totally misguided youths that think that socialism, maybe not such a bad idea. What can you tell to this young, I'm sorry, idiots, complete idiots who think that socialism might be a good idea?
Well, to begin with, every ideology, when it became compulsory, it is cruel, you know. Socialism means that everybody has to think the same way. And if you are not thinking and not following the general ideology, you're being punished, killed, mistreated. So to begin with, you know, idea of socialism, who knows? No, but nobody checked. But when you try to put it in life,
In practice,
it doesn't work.
exactly.
You know, if you don't compass, if you don't, you press people to follow. And socialism is anti-human. You know, you cannot. One of big ideas of socialism is equalness.
Equality.
But people are not equal. So if you make somebody big to be small, you know, he cannot be, and that's it, you know. And it's like anti-human to dictate to every human being how to think and how to behave. For if you don't it, the socialism can come through.
And essentially, when they use the word socialism or communism in practice, every single time,
There was no socialist or communist country without brutal violence of human beings.
which we call dictatorships or totalitarian regimes. Every single
Otherwise,
time.
it doesn't work.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Well,
So essentially, socialism or communism equals totalitarianism. Plain
brutality,
and simple.
brutality, violence of basic human rights.
And you personally experience that. You
Yeah.
personally experience what it's in the worst way of what it's like to be in a so-called socialist country. Union of Soviet socialists. They say, oh, USSR wasn't socialist. Then what does one of the S's stand for?
Yeah. No, that you know. Let's believe that from the beginning, the leaders of Soviet power felt maybe good about these big concepts.
But they don't, as you know.
But the moment they try to implement, they found that it is impossible. For people are different. Everybody has his approach, his thinking, his way of life, and you cannot build this socialist society until you put everybody in their concept and you force people behave and think whatever their ideology predicts you, which is abnormal, you know.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So
And
now another thing is that the funniest thing is that
again, there is no practical socialism in no place without violence, violating human rights, brutality, killing and misery other people.
that's exactly
It
right.
doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It cannot exist.
And your case specifically
Yeah.
brought into focus the world community as to what was happening in USSR at that time.
Yeah.
And again, it
You
was
know, like I will mention something very interesting. When I was arrested, primarily and brought to the first interrogation, I refused to cooperate. That I told there is a presumption of innocence.
You told them.
Yeah, I told them.
Really, what
They
the
told.
very concept.
They told. One moment, how you know that? You know. You were aware that you are going to produce a crime, and you studied literature, you know, write it in a protocol that he did know that he is going to produce a crime, and it is why he studied the literature of his human rights. You know, knowing your human rights is considered like a crime.
Knowing your rights is considered a crime. It's just insane, and people just don't understand. And it's a shame.
I wish them, too bad that nowadays there is no Soviet Union. Like to have a practice to go for a while there, and
I mean, one of the best examples is Venezuela today. I mean, look at Venezuela. Used to be one of the most, if not the most prosperous country in South America.
Indeed.
And look what happened now. What changed? Just one thing. The system.
Yeah.
Hugo Chavez and now Maduro, they decided to implement sort of socialism of the likes of USSR. And it's a misery.
And then, people have no motivation to do anything.
Everything disappeared all of a sudden, just like that.
If there is no like a private initiative, and you have your salary limited, and if you try to do something else, it's already considered as an economical crime. So people have no interest in lives, no interest to develop their capabilities, for they know that it will not help.
They don't even have to go far enough, but to look at the founder of the socialist movement, the first revolution, Vladimir Lenin. Even he, right after the revolution, when the same thing happened in Russia back then in 1917, when everything disappeared from the shelves, he decided to implement the new economic policy. And all of a sudden, virtually overnight, everything was back to normal.
A human being is born to be free. And if you are restricted, you stop being a human being. You don't have an interest in life. Your life is dull.
That's right.
I will just maybe for the end mention my father. That was arrested when I was a child of 10 in 1957. My father was a communist, a believer communist. He was not a member of Communist Party, but he believed, for he was born in Latvia, at that time, like America was outside.
And this
it is my family,
beloved family,
my
back
father,
in Riga.
and the mother, and my 3 sisters, and me as a child. So my father trusted. Latvia was a European country before it was,
Occupied by the
treaty, Hitler-Stalin treaty. So then it called Ribbentrop. It was Stalin and Hitler. So the moment it became 1940 a part of Soviet Union, he found that everything was a lie.
Oh, wait a minute. He actually lived in Latvia before it was
occupied. He was born in Latvia in 1912. And he believed that the communism is the best type of life, like the people you are dealing nowadays.
Really? So before it was free, independent, Western European country, and then all of a sudden comes 1935, it gets occupied.
1940.
1940.
The treaty was dividing the Europe.
1940, it was occupied by the Soviets. And what, he changed his mind?
And he couldn't believe, that the people that he believes that are representative of the paradise are behaving this brutal way, and really are very primitive people.
Wait a minute. So he believed in communism
until 1940. Wasn't it? He was a member of communist underground group. That communism was not legal in Latvia, so he's a member of a communist underground group. But the moment they came and he saw real practice, he stopped being.
I see. So here's the teachable moment for those who want communism. He's the best example. He's Riga. This is Latvia. Western, independent, democratic, right? Country before 1940.
Communism was considered a subversive movement.
And rightfully so. So your father happens to believe in communism, okay? In theory. So here comes practice. 1940, the country gets occupied by the Soviets, the so-called real communists, and then what happened?
Simply, it told that the Soviet soldiers that invaded Latvia behaved like barbars. Barbarians. They robbed private properties, and they arrested all political leaders of democratic parties and sent them away to Siberia to kill them there.
Murder. I mean, essentially murdered all of them. I mean,
they understood that they cannot build a socialism, socialist society, having political leaders, journalists that had a different outlook. To begin with, you have to put people in framework. That it's the way, and they believe that the democratical politicians of democratic parties and journalists would never accept it. So the best way was to send them to Siberia to kill them there.
Okay, so Your father, a
My father, as far he was a communist, he was not sent there.
Right.
But he
And then
witnessed
what
it.
happened?
Yeah, he witnessed that you know that the Soviet soldiers were poor people, you know, very bad educated, would be rob the property of people.
The vandals,
You know,
I mean,
vandals,
savages.
really vandals. So it happened, by the way, when the Germans were close to Latvia, and my father was aware that Germans kill communists. He told to his mother, "Let's escape." And she told, "What you're telling about? I remember German officers stayed in my house. They were polite men. I'm going to run away from German to the Vandals. You know, I better stay with the Germans." It's one of the reasons of the Holocaust. People couldn't believe, specifically in Soviet Union. They were glad that finally Europe is coming to their houses. You know, instead of these barbarians. Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is that, and I'll get back to your father in a minute, since you know, when we talk about the Germans and the barbarians, in some of my videos, I say, and being Jewish, I would say that Nazi Germany was better than Stalin's Russia.
For the Germans. For the Germans.
For the Germans, of course, not for the Jews. But
so Nazi Germany was better for the Germans than the Soviet Union for the Russians.
For the Russians. And the reason I'm saying that is because in Nazi Germany, if you're a Nazi, if you follow the ideology, if you pledge your allegiance to Herr Hitler, you're safe.
Yeah.
In the Soviet
it's not
Union,
that not that true. I don't.
More or
I don't
less.
agree. You know,
But
the moment is the dictatorship. There are small dictators. You know, and then they can do whatever. You know, they have too much power. In Nazi Germany, they could arrest everybody. If you simply, you know, you are my neighbor and I don't like you, I can, you know, blaspheme you and tell that you are the traitor or whatever. No, it's, you know, dictatorship is, and it was a cruel regime. I disagree. In this issue, I disagree completely.
Of course, no, but my point is they're both evil. But on the scale of evil, Nazi Germany was still slightly less evil than the Soviet Union.
I can't admit it.
Okay, okay, then.
And then more, I was not a German in Germany. I was a Jew in their concentration camps, and there is no way to justify it. And I believe that people that killed other people, even in their country, would behave like that. You know, you cannot divide it. You know, somebody that is able to kill a human being couldn't be expected to behave a better and more tolerant way to his citizens. It's you know.
That's not exactly my point, but that's okay. So let's go back to your father then.
So my father was arrested in 1957. For that time was like a campaign in Soviet Russia. They looked somebody to accuse in a bad economical situation of the citizens, and they decided to arrest the Jews. You know, and show here the Jews are robbing. It's because of their illegal economical activities. It's why, you know, the average Russian citizen is poor and underprivileged.
So in other words, they tried to scapegoat specifically the Jews in Latvia for the
not only all around Soviet Russia.
Well, but we're talking about specifically
50s, yeah,
for the worsening of the economic situation.
Yeah.
So it was our fault. The Jewish fault.
Sure.
Okay. So your father?
They accused him of something that he never did. That like he sold private goods. Goods. He worked in a state shop. You know, selling goods of the state. So they told that he sold illegally against the law goods for 5 rubles. That time, like for $10, and he got 5 years of imprisonment. For
5 years because he made a profit.
Yeah,
because he made a profit.
But it was not true. Finally, we managed to find that everything is set up. But he was in a labor camp and in prison, and my mother died because of it. Oh my God! So it was really.
So it was a setup. Number one. Number two, just the concept that it can, after 1940 in Latvia, if you buy something for a ruble or 3 rubles and sell it for 5 rubles,
yeah, it's a crime.
It's a crime.
You can be shot for that.
Which brings us to another issue. A lot of so-called democratic socialists, Bernie Sanders supporters, for instance, they bring Scandinavian countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and so on, as the examples of a successful socialist countries. What can you say to that?
See, to begin with, if has to do with the socialist concept, like trying to help weaker people and give them kind of financial support, taking it from their state property of income or whatever. It is true the moment your country is prosperous, but if it is has an ill economy, the Soviet Union never had a good economy, for people had no intention to work, and it is why it was bad. You cannot take something from one and to give to somebody else, For you are missing everything. Only the top people in the government had everything, but a regular person never had enough. We had no dwellings, we had no, even I would say, we in the 60s we wouldn't have a refrigerator. It was considered as a top luxury.
I know.
Yeah, and not a TV set.
But my point is, we'll get to that in a minute, is that what you mentioned was not socialism. These are social programs.
Yeah.
When your father would get something for 3 rubles and sell for 5 rubles,
right,
that's making a profit.
Right.
Can you buy something for 3 kronas and
No.
sell for 5 kronas
Yeah.
in one of those Scandinavian countries? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just by that definition, that disqualifies them from being socialist. You cannot make a profit in socialist country. So none of the Scandinavian countries are socialist. They have social programs, very generous social programs.
But the moment your country is developed, you can have this kind of social programs.
That's right, but they're still a capitalist country, hardcore capitalist country. And another important definition, that's what I keep repeating all over and over again, is private property.
Yeah, and private initiative. The reason the Soviets were underdeveloped, the main reason there was no private initiative permitted.
But
and people had no interest to develop economy, trade, or whatever, for they did know that their salary is limited and they cannot get more. If they would get more, it would be considered illegal and they will punish for that.
Which boils down to the same concept, making a profit.
Right.
If you don't make a profit,
and if you are not permitted to have profit, you are not interested in anything.
Exactly.
You come to your working place and you know that you will get a set salary. It doesn't depend how you work or whatever.
That's right.
And then it doesn't develop. It's economics and nothing is being developed.
And even the salary that you get, let's say you'll get 100 rubles.
Yeah, it's a meager salary.
But besides that, it's not like, you go to the store, you see all these luxury goods, you just don't have enough money. You'll go to the store and you say nothing. So money was really worthless over there.
Yeah.
Worthless. It's the connections that matter.
And, it was meaningful to have some money, better than not to have.
Of course, but even with the money, it's not, again, like here, when you're poor, you go to a store, you know that once let's say, and something costs $1,000, you only can save, let's say, $100 a month. You know that in 10 months, that item can be yours.
Yeah.
In the Soviet Union, there wasn't such a thing. You have 100 rubles, you need, let's say, for your kids, winter boots, you have no idea where to buy them. Right. And especially when we talk about luxury goods, like, imported winter women's
nothing like that.
Nothing like that. Yeah. And you see huge lines, you know that something, you remember the expression, выбросили, they threw.
Right. Yeah, so away.
This threw for sale. And
sale, right? It's sale. Sale.
Because otherwise there's nothing. All of a sudden, a huge line, and you know that there's something deficit.
Yeah,
is for sale.
I remember myself in going to school, coming up early in the morning to get a leaf of bread. And we had like a очередь.
Yeah,
line for a lot of people, in Latvia. And somebody would watch that you wouldn't buy more than one leaf of bread.
Even if you have money, see,
Yeah.
that makes another point.
For there's not enough bread, you know. If somebody would buy too much bread, it will miss others.
That's right. So even with money, after wasting so much time standing in line, and some people would faint. I know people who stand in line and faint, like little kids that would stand in line and
Okay, it was
faint.
in the 60s, it was already in a better situation. People
It
would
was
faint.
better.
Yeah, you had to stay on there for an hour.
Only for an hour of your life wasted in line just to get one loaf of bread. You can't get two because the people behind you, who, if you get two, will get no bread at all.
Yeah, sure.
And that's socialism for you, my friends. That's what's happening in Venezuela right now as we speak, my friends. Former prosperous country. Socialism is evil, socialism is death, and the socialism, as Churchill used to say, is equal share of misery. Misery. And that's how we lived over there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are you tired? Do you want to continue?
No, that's enough.
That's enough. So thank you so
I
much.
believe that if people watch the program and still can't understand, it is in vain. I wish them to, to practice it.
Exactly. For just one day, not as tourists, but as the actual citizens, where they're forced to stand in line, where they're forced to live like the Soviet citizen or citizens
and
of
keep
Cuba.
their mouths for saying the moment you complain, you are in a prison.
Exactly.
Anti-socialist.
Anti-socialist. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You are my hero. Yes.